The stars had never looked so cold. Admiral stood at the center of his command bridge, his four arms crossed behind his back as he watched the small blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. Earth. The humans called it Earth, such a simple name for a world that had caused so much trouble across the galaxy. Admiral, said his second officer, a tall with dark purple skin, we have confirmed visual contact with the human convoy. 5 ships, sir. Only 5. Allowed himself a thin smile. His fleet numbered 300 warships. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Empire had conquered 67 star systems. They had crushed rebellions, ended civilizations, and built the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. And these humans thought they could stand against them with 5 ships. Open a channel, ordered. I want to see the fear in their eyes when they realize what they face. The viewing screen flickered and changed. Instead of the distant stars and the human vessels, now saw the inside of a human ship. It was smaller than he expected. The walls were gray metal, covered with blinking lights and strange symbols. But what caught his attention were the 2 humans standing at the center of their bridge. One was a male. He had black hair cut short and dark eyes that seemed to study everything at once. He wore a simple uniform, dark blue with silver markings on the shoulders. His name tag read Ho in both human letters and the Universal Translator script. The other was a female. She was shorter than the male with long black hair tied back in a tight knot. Her eyes were sharp and focused, like a predator watching its prey. Her name tag said, and she stood with her hands clasped behind her back, completely relaxed. I am Admiral of the Empire, announced, his voice booming across both bridges. You are surrounded by the greatest fleet in galactic history. Your pathetic convoy is outnumbered 60 to 1. You will surrender immediately, hand over your ships, and submit to imperial law. Any resistance will result in your complete destruction. He paused, waiting for the reaction. He had given this speech many times before. Sometimes the conquered species would beg for mercy. Sometimes they would cry. Sometimes they would try to negotiate, offering treasures or technology in exchange for their lives. But they always showed fear, every single time. The human male, Ho, looked at the human female. They stared at each other for a long moment, watched their faces carefully, waiting for the terror to appear. Then something strange happened. Ho's lips twitched, his shoulders began to shake, and then, without any warning at all, he threw his head back and laughed. It was not a nervous laugh. It was not the laugh of someone trying to hide their fear. It was a real laugh, deep and genuine, the kind of laugh that came from true amusement. Ho laughed so hard that he had to grab the edge of his command console to keep himself standing. Covered her mouth with one hand, but could see her shoulders shaking too. Within seconds, both humans were laughing together, their voices mixing into a sound that echoed through the communication channel. Felt his purple skin flush with anger. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Do you not understand your situation? My fleet will reduce your ships to dust. Ho wiped tears from his eyes, still chuckling. I'm sorry, he said, though he did not sound sorry at all. It's just, did you hear that? 60 to 1. He thinks 60 to 1 is impressive. Nodded, her own laughter finally coming under control. To be fair, Captain, they don't know. How could they know? Know what? Growled. His 4 hands clenched into fists. No species had ever dared to laugh at him. He had killed billions. He had burned entire worlds. He was the most feared commander in the Empire, and these 2 small humans were treating him like a joke. Ho straightened up, still smiling. Admiral, I appreciate the welcome. Really, I do. It's been a long trip and my crew could use some entertainment. Entertainment? Stepped closer to the viewing screen. You think this is entertainment? Well, yes, Ho said simply. You see, Admiral, we've been doing this for a very long time. Much longer than your empire has existed, actually. And every single time it goes the same way. Some powerful species shows up with their big fleet and their scary weapons, and they demand that we surrender. And we always give them a chance to leave, added. It's only polite. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. It was not fear, he told himself. He was an admiral, he did not feel fear, but there was something wrong here, something that did not fit. You are bluffing, he said firmly. Our sensors show your ships clearly. Old technology, weak shields, minimal weapons. You have nothing that can threaten us. Ho tilted his head, like a teacher listening to a student give a wrong answer. Your sensors show what we want them to show, Admiral. That's rather the point. What is that supposed to mean? Before Ho could answer, a third human appeared on the screen. This one was younger, with messy black hair and a quick smile. His name tag read, and he was carrying some kind of portable device that beeped softly. Captain said, the scan is complete. 300 ships just like we expected. Standard weapons, standard shields, standard everything. Nothing special. Thank you, Ho turned back to the viewing screen. Did you hear that, Admiral? Nothing special. That's what your entire fleet is. Nothing special. Slammed one of his fists against his command console. Enough games. You have 10 standard minutes to surrender, or I will order my fleet to open fire. Sighed, it was a soft sound, almost sad. Admiral, I'm going to ask you one time and one time only. Please take your fleet and leave this system. Go back to your empire. Tell your leaders that humans are not to be threatened. If you do this, no one has to die today. You dare to threaten me. Could not believe what he was hearing. 5 ships against 300, and this female was telling him to run away. It's not a threat, said quietly. It's a warning, there's a difference. The communication channel went silent for a moment, looked around his bridge at his officers. They were all watching, waiting to see what he would do. He knew what they were thinking. If he showed any weakness now, the story would spread through the entire fleet. Admiral, frightened by 5 human ships, he would become a joke. No, he would not allow that. All ships, announced through the fleet-wide channel. Lock weapons on the human convoy. On my command, destroy them completely. Leave nothing but atoms. Across 300 warships, weapon systems powered up. Missiles loaded into their tubes. Energy cannons hummed with deadly power. The fleet was ready to unleash destruction on a scale that would make stars tremble. On the human ship Ho looked at, she nodded once, a small movement that meant everything. You know, Ho said conversationally, I always wondered what that would be like. Your empire has been expanding toward our territory for decades. We've been watching you, learning about you. Felt that cold feeling again, watching us how? Oh, Admiral, Ho smiled and for the first time saw something behind that smile, something old, something dangerous. We've been watching everyone, for thousands of years. That's what humans do. We watch, we learn, and we prepare. Prepare for what? Ho's smile widened. For this moment, the moment when someone finally decides to pick a fight with us. The communication channel flickered. For just a second, the image of the human bridge was replaced by something else. A glimpse of impossible darkness, shapes moving in the void, ships that were not ships, things that understanding. Then the normal image returned, and Ho was still smiling. Your 10 minutes are up, Admiral, Ho said, and so are ours. Whatever happens next, remember, we gave you a choice. Opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, something happened that made his blood turn to ice. His sensor officer screamed. The sound was so shocking, so unexpected that everyone on the bridge froze. We're trained from birth to show no emotion, to fear nothing, to face death with dignity. For an officer to scream like that. What is it? Demanded. What's wrong? The sensor officer turned around slowly. His face was pale purple, almost white. His hands were shaking so badly that he could barely speak. The human ships, he whispered, they're not ships. Explain yourself. I ran a deep scan, sir. The kind that takes longer but shows everything. And the human ships, they're empty, sir. There's nothing inside them. No engines, no weapons, no life support. They're just shells, empty shells floating in space. Felt the world tilt beneath his feet. That's impossible. We're communicating with them right now. We can see their crew. The signal isn't coming from the ships, sir. The sensor officer's voice cracked. It's coming from everywhere, from all around us, from inside our own fleet. At that exact moment, every light on the bridge went dark. And in the blackness, heard something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Human laughter. It came from the walls, from the floor, from the ceiling, from everywhere and nowhere at once. It echoed through the flagship, spreading to every corner of the massive vessel. And then it spread further, jumping from ship to ship, until 300 warships were filled with the sound of human amusement. When the lights came back on, found himself staring at the viewing screen. Owen were still there, still smiling. "We tried to warn you," said softly. "We always try to warn them." The last thing saw before his world exploded into chaos was the genuine pity in her eyes. And he finally understood that he had made a terrible mistake. The laughter stopped as suddenly as it had started. Stood in the center of his bridge, his 4 arms trembling with a mix of rage and something he refused to call fear. The lights had returned to normal, but nothing else felt normal anymore. "Status report," he barked. "All stations, status report now." His officers scrambled to check their consoles. The weapon officer spoke first, his voice tight with confusion. "Weapons systems are. They're still online, Admiral. No damage detected. Shields at full strength, sir. Navigation operating normally." Let out a breath he did not know he was holding. Whatever trick the humans had played, it seemed to be just that. A trick. An illusion designed to frighten them. He should have known. Humans were famous across the galaxy for their strange sense of humor. This was probably just their way of trying to scare off a superior force. He turned back to the viewing screen. Owen were still there, watching him with those calm, patient eyes. "Impressive light show," said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "But tricks will not save you. My fleet is undamaged. Your psychological games have failed." Ho exchanged a glance with. The young one had appeared again, standing just behind them with his arms crossed over his chest. "Admiral," Ho said slowly, as if speaking to a child, "that was not an attack. That was a demonstration, a small one. We wanted you to understand that we can reach you whenever we want, that your shields and weapons mean nothing to us." "Lies," spat the word. "If you had real power, you would use it. You're stalling for time, hopping for reinforcements that will never come. Earth has no allies. Everyone in the galaxy knows that humans keep to themselves." Stepped forward slightly. Her expression was serious now, all traces of amusement gone. "We keep to ourselves because we choose to, Admiral, not because we have to. There's an important difference." "I don't care about your politics. I care about results," turned to his weapon officer. "Are all ships ready to fire?" "Yes, Admiral. All 300 ships have weapons locked on target." "Good," faced the screen again. "This is your final chance, humans. Surrender now, or I will give the order to fire. Your tricks won't save you from 300 simultaneous weapon strikes." The bridge fell silent. Everyone was watching, waiting. This was the moment of truth. Either the humans would back down or they would die. Closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, there was something different in her gaze, something heavier. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I'm going to tell you a story. It won't take long, and I think you need to hear it." "I don't have time for stories." "Make time." Her voice was soft but carried an edge of iron. "Please." Something in that single word made pause. He raised one hand, signaling his weapon officer to wait. "You have 1 minute." Nodded. 10,000 years ago, humans discovered that they were not alone in the universe. We found signals coming from deep space, proof that other intelligent life existed. We were excited, hopeful. We built ships and traveled to meet our new neighbors. She paused, her jaw tightening slightly. They attacked us. Though they were called, they saw us as animals, insects to be crushed. They burned our colony ships, killed thousands of our people, and then they came to Earth to finish the job. Felt an unwilling interest. He knew nothing about these. They were not in any historical records he had seen. We were not ready for war, continued. We had no weapons, no defenses. We were peaceful explorers, nothing more. The thought we would be easy prey. What happened? We survived. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. It took us 300 years, but we survived. And when it was over, they were gone, not conquered, not defeated. Gone, erased from the universe as if they had never existed. A chill ran down spine. He had commanded the fleet for 60 years. He had destroyed entire civilizations. But even he had never wiped a species completely out of existence. You expect me to believe that, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Believe what you want, replied. They were the first. They were not the last. Over the next 9,000 years, 12 different species tried to conquer Earth. 12 times we faced extinction, and 12 times we survived. 12 species, repeated slowly. I've never heard of any of them. Of course you haven't. They don't exist anymore. The bridge was completely silent now. Even the background hum of the ship's engine seemed quieter. Ho spoke up, his voice gentle. We don't enjoy this, Admiral. We really don't. Every time it happens, we try to warn them. We try to give them a chance to walk away. But they never listen. They see our small ships and our quiet planet and they think we're weak. We're not weak, added from behind them. His young face was serious, all traces of his earlier smile gone. We've just learned not to show our strength unless we have to. Felt something shifting inside him. The cold feeling in his stomach was growing stronger. He thought about his fleet, 300 powerful warships. He thought about the empty shells floating in space that looked like human ships. He thought about the laughter that had come from everywhere at once. But he also thought about his reputation, his honor, the pride of the Empire. Even if your story is true, he said slowly, the Empire is not like those other species. We have conquered 67 star systems. Our technology is the most advanced in the known galaxy. Whatever tricks you used against weaker enemies, they won't work against us. His expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Was it disappointment? Sadness? Could not tell. Admiral, she said quietly, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to try to convince you. I've said what I needed to say. Now the choice is yours. The choice has always been mine, replied coldly. And my choice is clear. Does not retreat. Does not show fear. We came here to add Earth to our empire, and that is exactly what we will do. He turned to his weapon officer. On my command, all ships will fire simultaneously. Target the human vessels first, then begin bombardment of the planet's surface. Admiral, wait. The sensor officer's voice cut through the bridge. Something is happening to the human ships. Spun back to the viewing screen. The 5 empty shells that had been floating peacefully in space were changing. Their surfaces were rippling, like water disturbed by a stone. Waves of light moved across their hulls, shifting through colors that had never seen before. What are they doing? He demanded. On the communication screen, Ho sighed. We really did try, Admiral, remember that. The human ships began to fold in on themselves. There was no other way to describe it. They collapsed inward, shrinking smaller and smaller until they were nothing but points of light. And then, with a flash that left purple spots across vision, they were gone. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but empty space. Then the real ships appeared. They came from nowhere, from nothing. One moment the space around the fleet was empty, and the next moment it was filled with human vessels. Hundreds of them, thousands of them, ships of every size and shape, from small fighters to massive warships that dwarfed even the flagship. Could not breathe. His hearts were pounding so hard he thought they might burst. "How many?" he managed to whisper. His sensor officer's voice was barely audible. I can't count them all, Admiral. The sensors keep finding more. They're not just around us. They're inside our fleet, ships between our ships, fighters between our fighters. They're everywhere." The viewing screen flickered again. Ho's face appeared once more, but the background behind him had changed. He was no longer on the small bridge of a convoy ship. He was standing on the command deck of something vast, something incredible. Through the windows behind him could see stars moving in impossible patterns. "This is the UNSF Eternal Dawn," Ho said calmly. "It's one of our older ships, actually, about 2,000 years old. Not our most advanced vessel, but it seemed fitting for this occasion." His moved, but no words came out. "Admiral, I want you to understand something." Ho's voice was kind, almost gentle. "We don't hate you. We don't hate the Empire. In fact, we've been watching your civilization grow for centuries, hoping that you might be different from the others." Different finally managed to speak. "Different enough not to threaten us, different enough to become partners instead of enemies." Ho shook his head sadly. "But here you are, with your 300 ships and your demands for surrender, just like all the others." Appeared beside Ho. Her eyes were filled with that same heavy sadness that had seen before. "Admiral," she said, "I'm going to give you one more chance. One final opportunity to save your people. Order your fleet to stand down. Leave this system peacefully. Go home and tell your leaders that Earth is not to be threatened. If you do this, we will allow you to leave unharmed." Looked at the screen. He looked at the countless human ships surrounding his fleet. He looked at his officers, their faces pale with shock and fear. And then he looked at himself, at the admiral who had never retreated, who had never shown weakness, who had built his entire reputation on being unbreakable. He started, then stopped. His weapon officer was staring at him, waiting for orders. His entire crew was waiting. 300 ships were waiting. The whole empire was watching, even if they did not know it yet. Straightened his spine, he lifted his chin, and he made the only choice his pride would allow. "Fire," he said. "All ships open fire now." On the screen's eyes closed. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "So be it," she whispered. And the stars themselves seemed to tremble at what came next. The fleet fired with everything it had. 300 warships unleashed their weapons at once. Energy beams of pure destruction sliced through space. Missiles roared from their tubes, trailing fire and death. Torpedoes designed to crack planets apart flew toward their targets. The amount of firepower released in that single moment could have destroyed a small star. Watched the viewing screen with fierce satisfaction. Whatever tricks the humans had used, whatever illusions they had created, nothing could survive this level of destruction. The empty space around his fleet lit up like a newborn sun, bright with the fury of might. "Direct hits," his weapon officer shouted. "Multiple direct hits on the nearest human vessels." Allowed himself a grim smile. "Status on enemy ships." The weapon officer looked at his console. His face went pale. "Sir, I don't understand." "Explain." "The weapons hit them. I can see the impacts on the sensors, but the human ships are—" He stopped, his voice failing him. "They're what?" "They're fine, sir, completely undamaged. It's like we shot at ghosts." Felt his heart skip a beat. "That's impossible. Run the scan again." "I've run it 4 times, Admiral. The results are the same. Our weapons passed right through them." On the viewing screen, the human ships drifted lazily through the chaos of the attack. Energy beams sliced past them like light through water. Missiles exploded against their hulls but left no marks. It was as if the human vessels existed in a different reality, untouched by anything the fleet could throw at them. Ho's voice came through the communication channel, calm and almost sad. "Admiral, I want you to understand what you're seeing. Our ships exist in multiple dimensions at once. Your weapons are designed to damage things in your dimension. They literally cannot touch us." That's impossible," whispered. "Dimensional technology like that would require thousands of years of development finished for him. Yes, we had plenty of time to figure it out." The young human appeared on the screen. He was holding some kind of small device, barely larger than his palm. "This is a dimensional key, Admiral. It allows us to shift between layers of reality. Every human soldier carries one. Every human ship has thousands installed in its systems." Felt the world spinning around him. His entire understanding of warfare, of technology, of what was possible, crumbled in that moment. "You could have destroyed us at any time," he said slowly. "All those warnings, you were telling the truth." "We always tell the truth," Ho replied. "That's the saddest part, Admiral. Every species we've faced thought we were bluffing. Every single one. They couldn't believe that we would give them a genuine chance to survive." A new alarm began blaring across the bridge. Red lights flashed in every corner. "Admiral," the sensor officer screamed. "Something is happening to our ships. The crushing wave it just exploded." Spun around, "What, how?" "I don't know, there was no weapon fire, no missiles, nothing. 1 second it was fine and the next," the sensor officer's voice cracked. "Sir, the burning sky is gone too, and the Iron Victory, they're just vanishing." Throughout the fleet, ships began dying. It started slowly at first. One ship here, another there. Explosions bloomed in the darkness of space like terrible flowers, but within minutes the pace increased. Ships that had fought in 100 battles were being torn apart from the inside. No external weapons, no visible attacks. They simply came apart, pieces flying in every direction. "How are they doing this?" demanded. "Show me, find their weapons." His tactical officer was crying. Tears streamed down his purple face as he worked his console with shaking hands. "There are no weapons, sir. I can't detect any weapons being fired. The explosions are coming from inside our ships, from the reactor cores, from the ammunition storage, from the fuel lines. It's like someone is reaching inside and breaking things." His face appeared on the main screen. He was smiling, but it was not a cruel smile. It was the smile of someone who had done this many times before and wished he never had to do it again. "I'm inside your flagship right now, Admiral," said conversationally. "Well, a dimensional echo of me is. I can walk through your walls like they don't exist. I can touch your reactor core without anyone seeing me. I've already placed a shutdown command on your main power systems. You'll lose engine control in about 30 seconds. "Guards," shouted. "Find the intruder. All security teams search the entire ship." Laughed softly. "They won't find me, Admiral. They can't find something that exists in a different layer of reality. I could stand right next to your guards and they would never know I was there." As if to prove his point, the lights on the bridge flickered. When they came back on, was standing in the corner of the room. He waved casually then faded away like morning mist. "He was here," one of the officers whispered. "He was right here on our bridge." His legs felt weak. He grabbed the edge of his command console to keep himself from falling. This was not a battle. This was not even a war. This was something far worse. This was helplessness. "Admiral," Ho's voice came through the speakers again. "I want you to look at your fleet." Turned back to the viewing screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. Of the 300 ships that had surrounded Earth's convoy, less than 100 remained. The rest were debris, scattered across space in an ever-expanding cloud of metal and death. And the human fleet had not moved. Not a single human ship had changed position or shown any sign of combat operations. They were just watching. "We could end this in an instant," Ho said quietly. "Every ship in your fleet could be dust right now. Every soldier, every officer, every crew member. But that's not what we want, Admiral. We've never wanted that. Then what do you want? His voice was hollow, empty of its earlier pride. We want you to surrender, answered. We want you to take your surviving ships and go home. We want you to tell the Empire what happened here today, not as a warning, but as a lesson. A lesson. His eyes were soft, almost gentle. A lesson that the universe is bigger than anyone knows, that there are things older and stranger than empires and conquests, that some species are better left alone, not because they hate you, but because they are tired of killing. Thought about his career, 60 years of war, millions of lives taken, countless worlds brought under control. He had always believed that power was everything, that the strong conquered the weak because that was the natural order of things. But standing on his bridge, surrounded by the ghosts of his fleet, he realized something terrible. He had never been strong. None of them had been strong. They had just been lucky enough to never meet something truly powerful. Until now. If I surrender, he said slowly, what happens to my crew, my soldiers? They go home, Ho replied simply. Alive and unharmed. We don't want prisoners, Admiral. We don't want trophies. We just want to be left alone. And if I refuse? There was a long pause. When Ho spoke again, his voice was heavy with exhaustion. Then you die, all of you. And in 100 years, no one will remember that the Empire ever existed. Just like no one remembers the blessed host, or any of the other species that refused to listen. The communication channel fell silent. Looked around his bridge at his surviving officers. They were watching him with desperate hope in their eyes. They wanted to live. They wanted to go home to their families and their worlds and their normal lives. And in that moment, realized that he wanted to live too. But before he could speak, before he could give the order to surrender, something happened that changed everything. One of his captains, a young hothead named who commanded the battleship Endless Fury, suddenly broke formation. His ship, one of the few still intact, accelerated toward the nearest human vessel at full speed. Captain, stand down, shouted into the fleet channel. I am ordering you to stop. No, his voice came back, full of rage and terror. I won't surrender to these monsters. If we're going to die, we'll die fighting. All ships follow me, ramming speed. 3 other ships broke formation to follow. Their captains had been driven mad by fear, by shame, by the simple inability to accept what was happening. Watched in horror as the 4 ships charged toward the human fleet. On the viewing screen, Ho closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Admiral, he said softly. We really did try. The 4 ships reached the nearest human vessels. They never slowed down. They never changed course. They simply stopped existing. One moment they were there, engines blazing with desperate fury. The next moment they were gone. No explosion, no debris, no wreckage. They just vanished like they had never been real at all. The fleet channel erupted with screams and cries of terror. Officers who had fought in dozens of battles were weeping openly. The proud military, the terror of 67 star systems, had been reduced to sobbing children. And through it all, the human ships floated silently in space, unchanged and unchanging, like mountains watching a storm pass by. Fell to his knees, his 4 hands pressed against the cold metal floor of his bridge. He had no strength left, no pride, no hope. Please, he whispered, please stop, I surrender, we all surrender. There was a moment of silence. Then's voice came through the speakers, gentle and kind, like a mother comforting a frightened child. We know, she said, we know. The surrender took less than an hour. What remained of the fleet powered down their weapons and dropped their shields. Across 86 surviving ships, soldiers and officers stood in silence, waiting to learn their fate. Many of them expected death. Some expected slavery. A few even expected torture, the kind of treatment they themselves had given to conquered species. None of them expected what actually happened. Human ships approached each vessel slowly, carefully. They did not fire weapons or send threatening messages. Instead, they sent medical teams, engineers, counselors. Thousands of humans in simple gray uniforms boarded the enemy fleet not as conquerors, but as helpers. Stood on his bridge, watching in confused silence as a human shuttle docked with his flagship. He had ordered his guards to stand down, though part of him still expected a trap. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Ho stepped through first, followed by the young pilot. They were all unarmed. They were all smiling. "Admiral," Ho said, extending one hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Thank you for choosing wisdom over pride. You saved many lives today." Stared at the offered hand. In culture, physical contact with a defeated enemy was the ultimate insult. It meant that the enemy was so far beneath you that they were no longer considered a threat. But looking at Ho's open face and warm eyes, realized that this was not meant as an insult at all. It was simply how humans greeted each other, how they greeted everyone, friend or enemy. Slowly, hesitantly, reached out with one of his four hands and grasped Ho's palm. The human's grip was firm but gentle. "I don't understand," said quietly. "We came here to destroy you, to conquer your world. Why are you being kind to us?" Ho released his hand and gestured toward the viewing screen. The human fleet was still visible, thousands of ships floating peacefully among the stars. "Would you like to see something, Admiral?" Ho asked. "Something that might help you understand." Nodded slowly. Ho spoke into a small device on his wrist. "Eternal Dawn, this is Captain Ho. Request permission to demonstrate dimensional shifting to our guests." A voice responded immediately. "Permission granted, Captain. All crews prepare for educational display." Outside the viewing screen, something incredible began to happen. The human ship started to change. The vessels that could see, the ones that existed in normal space, began to fade like images losing focus. They did not move or explode or transform. They simply became less real, like photographs slowly disappearing from a page. And as they faded, new ships appeared in their place. These were different. They were made of materials that had never seen before. Their shapes were impossible, curves and angles that did not follow any rules of physics he knew. Light bent around them in strange patterns, creating halos of rainbow color that hurt to look at directly. "What you're seeing," explained, "is the second dimensional layer. These ships exist alongside the ones you saw before, but in a slightly different version of reality. They can interact with normal space when they want to, but most of the time they remain hidden." As watched, the second layer of ships began to fade as well, and behind them a third layer appeared, then a fourth, then a fifth. Layer after layer of human vessels, each one stranger and more powerful than the last, stretching into depths of reality that made his mind ache. "How many layers are there?" he whispered. "We're not entirely sure anymore," admitted. "We stopped counting after the first few thousand. The universe goes deep, Admiral, much deeper than anyone outside of Earth knows." Felt his legs go weak again. He had thought 300 ships against 5 was impressive odds. He had believed that the Empire was the greatest military power in the galaxy. But now he was seeing the truth. The human fleet was not just surrounding his survivors. It existed in countless layers of reality simultaneously. There were more human ships here than there were stars in the entire Empire. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why have you never used this power? You could conquer the entire galaxy in a week. You could rule everything." Ho's expression became serious. He walked to the viewing screen and stared out at the impossible display of human might. "Let me tell you about the Admiral. Really tell you, not just the summary." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "When they attacked Earth, we were truly helpless. Millions of our people died in the first assault. Our cities burned. Our dreams of peaceful exploration were destroyed. We had no choice but to fight back, even though we knew we couldn't win. But you did win, said. You told us that. We survived, Ho corrected. There's a difference. Winning means you achieved your goals. We survived, but we lost everything else. Our innocence, our hope, our belief that the universe was a welcoming place. Stepped forward, her eyes distant with old memories. The war against the lasted 300 years. By the end, there were only a few million humans left. We had retreated to underground bunkers on Earth, hiding like animals while the burned our world above us. And in those dark tunnels, we made a choice. What choice? Asked. We chose to become something new, something that could never be threatened again. His voice was soft but carried the weight of centuries. We devoted every resource we had to developing dimensional technology. We experimented on ourselves, on our ships, on reality itself. We did things that would horrify any normal species. And it worked, added. After 100 years of desperate research, we cracked the code. We learned how to exist in multiple dimensions at once. We learned how to reach through reality and touch things that shouldn't be touchable. We learned how to make ourselves invisible to any technology that only works in normal space. Ho turned back to face. They never knew what hit them. One day they were winning the war and the next day they were gone. Every ship, every base, every colony. We reached through dimensions and removed them from existence. Removed them, felt sick. You mean you killed them all? Every single one. Ho's voice held no pride, no satisfaction, only tired resignation. We had no choice. They had made it clear that they would never stop until humanity was extinct, so we did what we had to do. The viewing screen changed again. The layers of dimensional ships faded, replaced by images that did not recognize. Strange civilizations, alien cities, faces of species he had never seen in any historical record. The said, pointing to one image. They invaded Earth 2,000 years after They brought a fleet of 500,000 ships and technology that made the look primitive. The image changed to show the magnificent home world, gleaming with crystal towers and golden spires. This is what their civilization looked like before they met us. Beautiful, wasn't it? Another image, the same world but now it was dark, dead, silent. And this is what it looked like after. Could not look away from the dead world. You destroyed them too. We tried to warn them first, just like we tried to warn you. His voice cracked slightly. They laughed at us. They called us insects. They said they would grind our bones into dust and fertilize their gardens with human blood. So you erased them. We had no choice, suddenly shouted, tears streaming down her face. Do you think we wanted to? Do you think we enjoy being monsters? Every time this happens, we lose a piece of ourselves. Every extinct species is a weight on our souls that will never go away. Put a gentle hand on shoulder. She took a deep breath, struggling to control herself. I'm sorry, she whispered. It's just, after 10,000 years it never gets easier. Everyone thinks we're laughing because we're confident or arrogant. But the truth is, we laugh because if we don't laugh, we'll cry. And if we start crying, we might never stop. Stood in silence, processing everything he had heard. The humans were not arrogant conquerors enjoying their power. They were survivors of war, desperate to avoid the violence that seemed to follow them wherever they went. And they had given him a chance, a real chance. Even after everything his fleet had tried to do, they had offered mercy. Why? He asked again, his voice rough with emotion. Why let us go? We would have destroyed your world. We deserve death. Ho walked over too, and looked up at the tall with something like compassion in his eyes. Because killing you won't bring back the blessed host or the endless dark or any of the others we've had to destroy. Nothing will bring them back. He placed his hand on his arm. But letting you go, sending you home to tell your people what you saw, maybe, just maybe, that will prevent the next war. Maybe your empire will be the first to truly listen. And if we don't, asked quietly, if my emperor refuses to accept your warning. Ho's eyes grew sad. Then you know what happens, you've seen it yourself. Closed his eyes. He thought about his career, his empire, his whole life dedicated to conquest and glory. And he thought about the dead worlds on the viewing screen, the extinct species, the weight of 10,000 years of sorrow in his voice. When he opened his eyes again, something had changed inside him. I will tell them, he said firmly. I will make them understand. Even if I have to spend the rest of my life shouting the truth, I will make sure that no ever threatens Earth again. Ho smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. That's all we've ever wanted, Admiral. That's all we've ever asked for. Outside the viewing screen, the human fleet began to fade. Layer by layer, dimension by dimension, the impossible armada disappeared until only the 5 small decoy ships remained, floating peacefully in the darkness. Just 5 little ships, and a warning that would echo through the Empire forever. The journey back to space took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence, 3 weeks of broken ships limping through the void, 3 weeks for Admiral to think about everything he had seen and everything he had to do. When the surviving fleet finally reached the capital world of Prime, they were not greeted as returning heroes. News of their defeat had already spread across the Empire. Millions of citizens lined the streets, watching in stunned silence as the damaged warships descended through the atmosphere. 86 ships had left Earth. Only 79 made it home. 7 more had failed during the journey, their damaged systems finally giving out in the cold darkness between stars. Did not care about the crowds or the whispers or the looks of shame from his fellow officers. He had only one goal now, only one purpose. He had to reach the Emperor. The Imperial Palace stood at the center of Prime, a massive structure of black stone and purple crystal that had taken 500 years to build. It was designed to intimidate, to crush all who stood before it with the weight of power. Had always felt pride when he walked through those gates. Today, he felt only urgency. The Emperor received him in the throne room. This was unusual. Normally, defeated admirals were sent to the punishment chambers, where they would face discipline for their failures, but had requested an audience, and the Emperor had granted it. Emperor was old, even by standards. His purple skin was lined with wrinkles, and his 4 arms trembled slightly with age, but his eyes were sharp, and his mind was still as quick as it had been a century ago. Admiral, the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the vast chamber, you have lost more than 200 ships. You have failed to conquer a single small planet. By all rights, I should have you executed for this disgrace. Knelt on the cold stone floor. Your Majesty, I know I have failed, but I have not come here to beg for my life. I have come to deliver a warning. A warning? The Emperor leaned forward slightly. What warning could possibly excuse your failure? Raised his head and met the Emperor's gaze. The humans are not what we thought they were, Your Majesty. They are not a primitive species waiting to be conquered. They are the oldest and most powerful civilization in the galaxy, and if we do not leave them alone, they will destroy us. The throne room fell silent. The guards, the advisors, even the servants in the shadows all stopped and stared at. Then the Emperor laughed. It was a cold laugh full of contempt. This is your excuse, Admiral. Fairy tales about human power. I expected better from you. It's not a fairy tale, Your Majesty. Stood up, ignoring the guards who moved toward him. I saw their fleet with my own eyes. Thousands of ships existing in dimensions we cannot even perceive. They let us go. They showed us mercy. But they made it very clear what will happen if we ever threaten them again. And what is that? They will erase us, just like they erased the blessed host and 12 other species. They will remove every trace of the Empire from existence, as if we never lived at all. The Emperor's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, fear, could not tell. You expect me to believe this? the Emperor said slowly. You expect me to accept that some backwater species defeated our greatest fleet with invisible magic ships. I expect nothing, Your Majesty. I only tell you what I witnessed. Reached into his uniform and pulled out a small device. The humans gave me this before I left. They said it contained proof of their claims, records of every species they have ever destroyed, evidence of their dimensional technology, everything you need to verify my story. He held out the device. A guard stepped forward to take it, but the Emperor raised one hand. Bring it to me directly, the Emperor commanded. I want no filters between myself and this so-called proof. Walked up the long steps to the throne, feeling the weight of every eye in the room upon him. When he reached the top, he handed the device to Emperor. The Emperor examined it carefully. It was a simple thing, barely larger than a finger, with a single button on one end. He pressed the button. Light erupted from the device, filling the throne room with images and sounds. The gathered court gasped as they saw what had seen. The dimensional ships, the destruction of the fleet, the dead worlds of extinct civilizations, the tired, sad faces of humans who had lived for thousands of years, killing species after species because they had no other choice. And finally, a message. Ho's face appeared in the air above the throne, larger than life. He looked directly at Emperor as if he could see him through time and space. Emperor of the Empire, Ho said. My name is Ho, Captain of the United Nations Space Fleet. I speak on behalf of all humanity. The Emperor sat very still, his ancient face unreadable. Your Admiral showed courage today. He chose mercy over pride, wisdom over glory. Because of his choice, your species will survive. Ho's expression became serious. But survival is not guaranteed. It depends on what you do next. The projection shifted, showing a map of the galaxy. A tiny blue dot marked Earth's location. A massive purple shape represented the Empire. We are giving you a gift, Emperor. A gift that we have never given any other species that attacked us. We are giving you knowledge. The map zoomed out, revealing the true scope of the galaxy. Hundreds of civilizations were marked, most of them unknown to records. These are the species currently living in this galaxy. Many of them know about humans. Many of them fear us. And all of them, without exception, have one thing in common. The map changed again. Now only a few dozen species were highlighted. These civilizations attempted to conquer Earth at some point in their history. Notice anything interesting. Watch the Emperor's face carefully. He could see the moment when understanding dawned. The highlighted species were all gone. 12 major civilizations once controlled significant portions of this galaxy, Ho continued. The Empire, the Collective, the Blessed Host, the Endless Dark, and 8 others whose names you have never heard. All of them saw humanity as easy prey. All of them attacked us. His voice grew heavy. None of them exist anymore. The projection returned to Ho's face. He looked directly at the Emperor with eyes that held of pain. You have a choice now, Emperor. The same choice we gave Admiral. The same choice we have given every species that ever threatened us. He paused. You can leave us alone. You can take your ships and your soldiers and your dreams of conquest, and you can build your empire somewhere far from Earth. If you do this, we will never bother you. We might even become friends someday, trade partners, allies against the real dangers of this universe. His expression hardened. Or you can try again. You can rebuild your fleet and come back with bigger ships and deadlier weapons. You can convince yourself that this time will be different, that you can find a way to hurt us. Ho smiled then, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen this moment play out many times before. If you choose that path, then one day, somewhere in the distant future, someone will find this message floating in empty space. They will wonder what the empire was. They will search the historical records and find nothing. And they will move on with their lives, never knowing that you ever existed. The projection began to fade. The choice is yours, Emperor. Choose wisely. Ho's image disappeared. The throne room was silent. Emperor sat on his throne for a long time, staring at the space where the human's face had been. His four hands gripped the armrests so tightly that the stone cracked beneath his fingers. Finally, he spoke. Admiral. Yes, Your Majesty. You showed courage today, not on the battlefield but here in this room. It takes bravery to tell an emperor that everything he believed was wrong. Said nothing. The emperor rose from his throne. He walked down the steps slowly, his ancient body moving with surprising grace. When he reached, he placed one hand on the admiral's shoulder. Effective immediately, you are promoted to Grand Admiral of the fleet. Your first order is to establish a permanent exclusion zone around human space. No ship is to approach within 100 light years of their territory. Felt his heart's pounding. Your Majesty. Additionally, the Emperor continued, you will send a diplomatic message to the human government. You will express our sincere apologies for the misunderstanding and our desire for peaceful relations. Peace? One of the advisors blurted out. Your Majesty, surely we cannot simply surrender to these humans. The honor of the Empire demands. The honor of the Empire demands that we survive. The Emperor's voice cracked like thunder. I have ruled this empire for 150 years. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have seen species that seemed invincible crumble to dust. He turned to face his court, his eyes blazing with the fierce intelligence that had kept him in power for so long. The humans showed us mercy. They could have destroyed us completely, but they chose to let us go. They did not demand tribute or territory or slaves. They asked only to be left alone. He walked back up the steps to his throne and sat down heavily. That request will be honored by me, by my successors, by every emperor who sits on this throne until the end of time. The empire will not become another footnote in human history. We will survive. He looked at with something like respect. And it is all because one admiral was brave enough to listen, brave enough to learn, brave enough to tell the truth. Bowed his head. Thank you, Your Majesty. Do not thank me, Grand Admiral. Go do your duty, and make sure that our children and our children's children never forget the lesson we learned today. As left the throne room, he thought about the humans, about Ho and Young, about their tired eyes and sad smiles, about the weight of 10,000 years of killing that they carried on their shoulders. He thought about their laughter, the laughter that was not mockery but pain, the laughter that kept them from crying. And he made a silent promise. The Empire would not be another name on their list of extinct species. They would survive. They would remember. And maybe someday they would truly understand. Far away on the bridge of the UNSF Eternal Dawn, Captain Ho watched the fleet disappear into the distance, stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the stars. Do you think they'll listen? She asked quietly. Ho was silent for a long moment. Maybe, he finally said. For the first time in 10,000 years, I think maybe they will. Smiled. It was a small smile, fragile and hopeful. Then it was worth it. Ho nodded slowly. It's always worth it, he said, every single time. And together they watched the stars shine in the endless darkness, hoping that this time, finally, the lesson would stick.